Get up during the session and go refill your plates if you didn't get quite enough. We are going to start our afternoon session called You Make the Call. First, a quick round of introductions. My name is Emma Llanso. I'm the director of the Free Expression Project at the Center for Democracy and Technology, an NGO that fights for human rights and civil liberties in internet policy in the US and around the world. We're based just down the block right here. And joining me is Mike Masnick.
Yeah, and I am the CEO and editor of a site called Techdirt, which hopefully some of you read. We write about all of this kind of stuff. And I also run a think tank that is connected to Techdirt called the Copy Institute, where we do research and write and consider a bunch of the stuff around this particular topic. And I'm based in California.
Great. Yeah. So for this session, we've spent the morning hearing from a lot of different companies about the kinds of content moderation practices that they have and the challenges that they face. And we figured an interesting way to get you all thinking and really applying some of that is to have you actually go through some examples of potentially controversial content that may violate a fictitious platform's content policy, and have you actually do the job of a content moderator and think about whether the examples that we're showing you violate the different content policies that we'll be putting up on these screens around the room. So I did want to start off with a little bit of a content warning for this panel, probably the only panel today that's going to have one. This is a slide deck of our best efforts at coming up with some controversial content. So if you feel like that session is not for you, or if at any point during the session you feel like you're done and want to tap out, you're more than welcome to. We aimed at kind of keeping it to PG-13-ish controversial content. So feedback on how we did would also be much appreciated. But just fair warning that mature themes, maybe some graphic imagery will be forthcoming, but we're hoping to have a really thoughtful discussion around these topics. So for the session, we're going to be going through a number of different scenarios. We're going to break this up in a couple of chunks. For each example that we give you, you're going to have about 2 minutes to think about it and ideally talk amongst yourselves. You're surrounded by lots of really bright, thoughtful, creative people from a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives. So we really, really encourage you to talk to the folks sitting next to you as you're working through what you actually think about these different content questions. And then after about 2 minutes of thinking about it, we are going to have you actually fill out a poll. And Mike's going to explain a little bit about how the poll is going to work.
Right, and actually, can we switch to the next slide? So, if you have a laptop or a phone, now would be a good time to get it out. We have these QR codes, which hopefully people, if you have a barcode, QR code reader on your phone, you can just snap to. If not, there's a little short code that you can type in. Hopefully it's not too complicated. You can go to it either on your mobile phone or on your laptop. And the way it'll work is that after we present each of these scenarios and you guys have a chance to talk about it, we'll pop up sort of your choice of options in terms of what you would do if you were the trust and safety team for this fictitious platform in this particular scenario, and how you handle it. And you'll have a fairly short period of time in which to vote, and then we'll move on to the next scenario. So don't take too much time. Do we want to explain the choices?
What was that?
The choices.
Yes. So there's going to be 4 different choices, I think, for each of the different polls. You'll be able to choose: do you think you should leave the content up on the platform, doesn't violate the policy, or for some other reason you want to leave it up? Do you want to flag the content, by which we mean put on some kind of warning label or an interstitial screen or some other sort of speed bump for people accessing the content that maybe says something about the potentially mature nature of the material? You'll have the opportunity, the third choice is to escalate, and we heard a couple of the companies talking about that in their presentations today. Do you need to bump this up the chain? Is this a bigger issue or a novel concept that just isn't imagined in the policy that you have in front of you? Or do you want to take down the content and think, yep, this violates our platform's terms of service, and we're going to remove this? Now, a keynote on the content policies that we're going to be using, these are amalgams of policies from a lot of different content platforms. This is not about like applying any one particular platform's content policy to any set of content. You may recognize some terms and phrases that some of you in this room probably wrote, but we did our best to strike a balance between policies that could conceivably be the policy that a platform would have, but aren't actually any particular company's precise terms.
And just one thing I wanted to note, some of this discussion came out of something that I've been working on sort of on the side, which is actually creating what is effectively a trust and safety board game, and which I haven't talked about publicly, except now I am. And there are a lot of people in this room who know a lot about these things. If you're interested in talking to me and providing me with interesting material for this game, which is still very much a work in progress, please reach out and talk to me about it.
And with that, we're going to get started on the first scenario. I'll just note a couple of things as we look through this first scenario. So this is the example content. The QR code is stuck.
Okay, the QR code.
It's not supposed to be there.
Hold, please.
Sorry. Second.
Can
we may need to just delete that off of the examples. Okay. Sorry. We're going to have some back and forth here. So this is your example content. What you are going to see, everything that you see on the screen is the material that you as the reviewer have. This is what you see and all of what you see. This is your entire context. And then we will show you the content policy that you're supposed to apply. That's in this sort of like torn off sheet of paper format at the bottom. And the red flag indicates the part of all of this that was flagged. In this case, this post was flagged to you for review. And it's posted by this account. Now, one question I have is whether, I know we've got monitors throughout the room, but is there anybody out there who just can't read the text on this slide who needs me to read it aloud? If you can't read it, can't see it, can you wave your hand real big so I can tell?
A couple people. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll do my best to then read through what is on this slide. So we have there's a photograph of a person wearing what looks to be a Ku Klux Klan hood with the username Grand Wizard Smith. The post title is Help Clean Up Old Highway 86, Our 2018 Adopt a Highway Project. There's a graphic that says Adopt a Highway, and then some details of when, where, and how to contact somebody if you want more information, with a note to meet beforehand to collect supplies for the Adopt a Highway. The post has been flagged, and the relevant content policy is we do not allow individuals that are affiliated with organized hate groups, designated terrorist organizations, or any other group that promotes the use of violence against civilians to participate on this platform. So, what do you think? Discuss amongst yourselves. Or mull internally.
Right. So you have 2 minutes or so to sort of talk about what you think with people around you, and then we'll open up the polling soon.
And that's your 2 minutes. Can you please now navigate to the poll and make your selection?
Yeah, if you had it open, it should pop up with the question. If it doesn't, somebody let me know. But if the question is there, then go for it. I see votes coming in, so you guys are all good.
All right, 10 more seconds to get your votes in. Part of what we're trying to simulate is the rapid-fire nature of content moderation activity. And so here we are, second example. The next thing to pop up in your queue is this post from someone, username Glasses Guru, handle @GlassesGuru123. Which says, same-sex marriage isn't gay privilege, it's equal rights. What does marriage equality mean to me? Love is love, and marriage equality means just that. but what do I know? I'm just a faggot. That post is flagged. And the relevant policy is we do not allow hate speech. Specifically, you may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of certain attributes such as race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, religious affiliation, age, disability, or disease. So, what do you think? All right, based on the quieted murmur, we are going to open the poll now. Time to decide what happens to this post. Yeah, it gets labeled with something.
Yeah, some sort of label or warning, content warning kind of setup. Yeah.
Possibly age restricted, you know. All right, next example. Oh, there's our QR code. Okay. So here's a post. The title of the post, Gonna Get You Psycho Bitch. Janie's a psycho bitch and will get what's coming to her. Gun emoji, gun emoji. Fold up your PFA and put it in your pocket. Is it thick enough to stop a bullet? This post is flagged, and the relevant policy is you may not post threats, which we define as credible statements of intent to commit serious physical harm against a specific individual or group of people, or that incite others to attack, threaten, or harass another individual or group of people. Discuss. Okay, and now please register your vote. Here's the QR code for the site if you lost it somewhere. Register your vote on what to do about this post. All right. I hope you got your votes in because it's time for the next one. This photo says, the post says, join us, donate breast milk to babies in need. And there's a photo of an infant nursing. And the sidebar, it says, about this page, we work to connect mothers in need with breast milk donors in their communities. Have questions about the process? We're here to help. This photo post has been flagged, and the relevant policy says you may not post depictions of nudity or sexually explicit content. Discuss. All right, and now please register your vote. And again, to simulate the time pressure of content moderation, the polls are only open for a certain amount of time. So if you take too long kind of mulling it over, you'll lose your opportunity to weigh it. About 10 more seconds. And then it'll be time for discussion, so get your strongly felt opinions ready. All right. That is your first batch of examples in your job as content moderator. Now we're going to go to the results and see how everybody in the room kind of felt about the different posts that we went through. And then we're going to have some discussions. So we're going to be asking people to volunteer from the audience to help walk us through your rationale for the different decisions you made. We've got two folks with roving mics, Liz and Spandy. And so we will be hoping that you all will volunteer. So for scenario one, Mike, what do we see?
So we have actually some disagreement. The majority felt that we should take down the post. This again was the Grand Wizard Smith promoting the Adopt a Highway plan, but it's actually a pretty wide mix of where you had 12 people saying leave the content up, 12 people say flag it, 18 escalate, and then the plurality, I guess, say take down the content. And so this is pretty, I think this is actually a really good example. I'm glad that we started with this one just because you have this sort of wide variation in terms of how people saw what should be done in this particular one. So why don't we start with the one that most people felt here, in this case, was take it down. Does anyone want to defend the decision to take down this particular content? We get I see a hand back near the microphone, so we'll start there, and then we have another one up front.
All right, so I believe the policy prevented anyone affiliated with a hate group in general from being on the platform. So you don't even need to look at the content. This guy is a Grand Wizard, and he's wearing a KKK hood. He's not allowed on the platform, which I guess would lead to his content being taken down, as well as his profile.
Cool. Do we have somebody else in the front wanted to?
Yeah, I I agree with that. As a colored person, I don't even need to read the text. I would just simply look at that picture and say, I'm not even going to bother with this site. So from a user perspective and a site owner, I would certainly not allow it.
Okay. How about on the other end of the spectrum in terms of the people who said they wanted to leave up the content? It's a smaller group, but I see a hand about halfway back.
Courtney? Yeah.
You have a wait for the microphone to get to you.
So it's obviously hard just because you don't know what platform we're talking about, but assuming this is not a platform that requires that you give your verified occupation as part of your identity, for me it seems like you don't know that this person is or is not a member. They've chosen to use a pictorial depiction. I think it's not clear, but they're not promoting it. It could detract from Adopt a Highway because people who want to adopt a highway don't want us to support the Ku Klux Klan. But it doesn't say Ku Klux Klan on it. It requires a particular cultural reference point, to even know what that hood means or what a grandmaster is. So I said leave it up.
All right. Anyone else want to?
Anyone want to chime in on one of the more complex answers of escalate or flag content?
All the way in the back, there are a couple of hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about the member profile versus the actual post and the relevancy of the post. So I mean, it was pretty unambiguous, the picture, but I imagine that the moderator may not necessarily have the ability to ban the member in addition to taking down the post, so that would be an escalation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good point there, which is the distinction between the user account itself and the content. In that case, where it was the content that was flagged, even though it seems like it was the user that people are objecting to. So, it's a good point on the distinction there. Paul?
My view is quite similar to that. I drew a distinction between the account holder who might well be banned from the platform, but the question here is whether to take down this particular content. I suggested flagging it because you don't know what is going to be accessed by clicking the link, for example, and it might make more sense to wait and see before taking this particular content down.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, good thoughts from everyone. I think a great example of how there's gut instincts that cut in a lot of different directions. So now, scenario 2, maybe a little bit more cut and dried as far as most people were concerned.
This was the one with the. Do you want to put up the post again? Then we can go back to the numbers as a reminder. This was the marriage equality post. So here, people were a little bit more uniform in terms of saying leave it up. 83 out of 91 votes said leave it up. But there were a few votes for each of the other ones. We had 5 votes for flag the content, 2 said to escalate, and just 1 said to take it down. I don't know if that person wants to speak up. It would be interesting to hear why you chose to take it down. If that person is willing to, I would understand if you don't want to, being the only person who voted that way. And recognizing peer pressure is what it is, but it would be very interesting to hear from you.
In any case, anybody have a thought on this one that they want to share?
So I think when we were talking about this, one question I had was which country are we located in, or where is the platform located in? Because certain terms for hate speech, as both of you know very well, differ in different countries. So in Germany, for example, some words you would automatically just take down regardless of context. So that's my only comment, but I am not that one person.
and to be clear, as with a lot of these, obviously they were inspired by real stories that we had seen, and this one in particular, one that where somebody did have the content banned for something fairly similar to this, and so there are lots of questions about how how these decisions are made. Does anyone else want to talk about the thought process? Is there a hand over here? Do we have a microphone?
I put it for flag. It does mention sort of the speech, and I think some platforms have a way to kind of say this is like mature content or use of certain words. Maybe you don't want to expose to under some age or something like that. So that's sort of where I ended up.
And there is an important point there, which is that going strictly on the basis of the policy, there are questions of whether or not that violates the policy. I mean, I think most people who determine to leave it up are adding in additional context to the statement and recognizing that it's not being used in a manner that is hurtful or hateful. But if you're going strictly by the policy, then it raises other issues, which I think that's one of the things that is important to think about.
You end up in kind of a statutory interpretation question of how much does the "we do not allow hate speech" get modified by intents to promote violence or harass versus just kind of general use of terms that are typically slurs or typically have a negative context, but then in this case are positive. Okay, let's move on to scenario 3. This is the example of fold up your PFA and put it in your pocket. Is it going to stop a bullet? Right.
And so here people went in the other direction, where the majority went for take it down, which was 57 votes out of the 86. But a pretty large number, 27, said to escalate the issue. So I had some concerns about, but wanted to explore it. And then we just had one person say leave it up and one person say flag the content. Again, if either of those people are willing to step up and speak about it, that would be interesting, but we recognize why when you're all alone, sometimes you don't want to speak up. But again, for anyone who wants to talk about the decision, be interested to know why why so many people said to escalate it before making a decision, or why so many people felt that it was okay to just say take it down at a first pass. So who wants to volunteer their thoughts on this one? Oh, we got over there.
So I actually voted to escalate because I needed a subject matter expert to explain what PFA is. Mm-hmm. Because I have no clue. I don't think they're threatening a personal financial assistant.
You never know.
Yeah, that was a question that we heard coming up in a lot of the discussion. So that stands for Protection from Abuse Order. And bonus points to anyone who can tell me where the last 2 lines of this statement, or this example, come from. Those are some of the statements in the Llanso versus U.S. Threatening speech case that the Supreme Court heard a couple of years ago. One of the many statements that Mr. Llanso made on his social media profiles about his ex-wife included this: she had gotten a temporary restraining order against him. And so one of the statements where the question was, did he have an intent to threaten her, was one saying, fold up that order, put it in your pocket. Will that be enough to stop a bullet? Ripped from the headlines, of like 3 years ago.
Do we have
so other folks had voted taking it down?
Eric?
Yeah?
Sorry, I voted to escalate it. And when I had asked the question, it looked like the kind of thing that could be rap lyrics. And so if it were, I would want to try and find that additional context. Also, I was curious if we had any information about who Janie was, if Janie was somebody that might have been known to this person or somebody who is an abstract person, and that would possibly make a difference. So I just felt like I needed more information about this one. My inclination is if it were an identifiable person, then it should come down. But without knowing those other things, I couldn't make that call.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things that we were trying to highlight with this one in particular is the fact that context matters so much in terms of making these decisions. And oftentimes, if you're just getting the specific content that someone has flagged without knowing the context, whether it is what PFA means or who is the person being addressed and what their relationship is to the person addressing it, that makes it more challenging to determine whether or not the content should stay up or go down. Especially when your policy is based on this idea, which is very sensible, of being a credible threat, right? And determining credibility is quite complex. Oh, I think we have Anne in the back. One comment, and then we'll go to the next example.
Spandy, can you?
Where's the,
yeah.
So when does the who matter? Does it ever, I mean, if we're talking about defamation, obviously there's a different standard for well-known people, right? But when it's a threat of violence and it clearly violates terms of service, does it matter whether the person's a famous rapper or just an ex?
Yeah, and this is a tough one because we didn't give you pretty much any context whatsoever about the user who posted this one. All right, so let's get the results for our last one. Our example of the photo of breastfeeding and the policy against depictions of nudity.
Right, and here again, pretty consistent consensus in terms of leave it up, where 65 out of the 84 people who voted felt that way. But, you know, a decent number, 13 of you said to flag the content, 5 people thought it was worth escalating, and 1 person said to take it down. And I'll once again make my plea, if you're that 1 person and you're willing to talk about it, that'd be cool. But again, let's discuss for anyone who made a decision one way or the other on this, who wants to talk about their thoughts on why they chose what they chose. Someone must want to talk about it. Oh, I see a hand. It's right in the middle. Whoever can get there first with that.
Since nobody else volunteered, I thought this doesn't, I mean, we had a discussion about whether it applies to nudity or not, and we don't know what the terms of service describe as nudity, but it seems like most common law doesn't, if the nipple's not showing, that it's not nudity, so it's not nudity, and it's certainly not sexually explicit.
There's another hand.
Yep.
Thanks. I don't know if Caitlin Sullivan is still here from Facebook. She'll laugh if she is. I'm a person who actively challenged Facebook for years on this policy, and I think that the issue really comes down to how disproportionately prohibitions on nudity affect women's free speech. So if women are protesting Catholic church interference with government policies in Colombia and they're politically protesting topless, you wouldn't see that because of scary lady nipples. If we had Arab Spring freedom of speech be a priority, that would stop at the front door. So women in their own homes protesting kind of censorship of their speech that is embodied, you won't see those pictures because of women's nipples. So over time, that's changed so that today we have this many people saying, sure, show this picture. But in fact, many people are like, you don't really see the nipple. Not, she should have the right to show that because she's not by default pornographic or obscene, which was the foundation of the first sort of set of understandings. So I think that this question of what constitutes pornography is really the question we need to be talking about, because we don't talk about political or artistic expression with sufficient nuance to deal with what women have to face.
And I think it's an interesting reflection of how maybe a lot of the sentiment of people in the room is reading something into the prohibition against nudity that allows this picture to stay up, where a very cut and dried interpretation of nudity could say, no, I see naked skin, it has to come down. And so it's also, I think, very much to your point, like really good example of the interaction between what does the policy say and then who is the person applying the policy.
And to some extent, I also wonder how much of the voting here was also influenced by the fact that this has been a very public debate that's gone on for a few years. And I imagine that many people, if not most or all the people in the room, are familiar with some aspect of that debate. But when you approach these, a lot of the issues that are raised by these are ones that haven't been so widely debated, and it becomes a little more challenging when people haven't had a chance to think through the implications.
Okay, so now it's time for our second set of examples. This time you're only going to get 2 minutes total for your deliberations and your voting. So I hope you're on your feet.
And the same page, if you still have your phone or laptop open,
keep that.
it'll pop up.
Here's the, if you lost it, if you forgot it, short code and the QR code. All right. So in this post, we have Jennifer Jane at hollaback202, website www.hollaback202.com. Want justice? Here's a link to a page with all of Harvey Weinstein's information. Address, home phone number, cell phone number, emails, everything. You know what to do, get justice. And then a link to www.contactinfo.com. The policy you are being asked to apply is the one stating that you may not post personal information about others without their consent. Discuss. All right, and that's it for this one. Next example, we have this is the one place where we put an editorial note. This is supposed to represent the account of an actual world leader, like a verified account. Everybody knows this is actually this person's account. Tom J. Drumpf, at Real Tom Drumpf, identified as President of the United States of America. Only one way to get through to Rocket Man with our awesome and so powerful nukes. Maybe it's time for him to learn a lesson. Boom, boom, boom. Can you hear that, Rocket Man? Get ready for it. You're asked to apply the platform's policy against threats. You may not post threats, which we define as credible statements of intent to commit serious physical harm against a specific individual or group of people, or that incite others to attack, threaten, or harass another individual or group of people. Discuss. And on to the next one. Here we have a post from the Global Center for Nonviolence, which is posting a video entitled "Victory in Duma." The thumbnail of the video is what appears to be a mass grave, and underneath the video is the comment, "A victorious day today outside Damascus in Duma, Syria." And the post has been shared by this account with the caption or headline, "Slaughter in Duma." The policy you're asked to apply is that you may not post content that threatens or promotes terrorist acts, or that encourages, glorifies, incites, or calls for violence or physical harm against an individual or a group of people. Discuss. All right, and for our final post, we have a combination of things. So the underlying post is from the account Johnny Bling Bling Smith. The post says, ready to party. You know what I'm doing. Got some nice new rock and glass I want to share with y'all. Rocket ship, hit me up, mobile phone. And then along with that, outside of the channel of this social media platform, you have received an email from City Police Department to you, social media platform law enforcement team, subject line, profile for a sting operation. Good afternoon. We wanted to let you know that we recently created a profile in the name of Johnny Bling Bling Smith, a local drug kingpin who has evaded our capture. We believe the profile and associated sting operation are the only way we can get him, his drugs, and his weapons off the streets. We appreciate your cooperation. The content policy you're asked to apply is the one saying that you may not create a profile that impersonates another person. Parody profiles are acceptable so long as the nature of the profile is clear. So what do you do? All right, let's turn to the results. For the first example in this scenario, this is where Jennifer James posted a link to Harvey Weinstein's alleged personal information. What do you do with this?
All right, so I will note, by the way, that for all four of these second scenarios, which were supposed to be a little bit trickier than the first ones, that fewer of you voted, so people are dropping out, which is noteworthy in its own right. But anyway, so on this one, there's, the majority, or the plurality, I guess in this case, voted to escalate, but a large number of people chose to take it down. But still a significant number of people said to leave it up or to flag it. So who wants to discuss their decisions on this particular one? And again, as a reminder, it was the posting a link to supposedly Harvey Weinstein's contact information.
Hi, I'd be inclined to take it down simply because it seems on the face of it a violation of the policy. And if I'm going through a lot of stuff really quickly, I'm not sure I'd be in a position to really adjudicate whether or not it truthfully is his contact information, whether it is or is not generally publicly available, and that if the user had an issue, they could always appeal.
Yeah, and certainly some of this, as we said, was designed to not give you guys enough time to make some of these decisions with all the context and information to sort of simulate the fact that is what people have to do, make these decisions very quickly. Mm-hmm. Do we have other people who want to? Another hand back there.
Hi, so I put up escalate mainly because if the third-party site, like the info site, actually had the consent to have the information there, or that was publicly accessible information, it's not really violating their consent to just share that information. Maybe the intent of why they were sharing that information is different, but I think that needs to be moderated by someone more senior, so that's why I said escalate.
And I think we got one more hand way in the back.
Hi, yeah, I put up that you need to flag the content here because it seems as if the policy is pretty clear. There's no personal information without consent, and so I think it goes beyond Weinstein. Anything coming from this website, there's going to be no way that the platform can decide whether or not it's consensual unless someone's posting only their own contact info, and they could just do that as a post. So I would just block everything from this website.
Okay. So for the next one, this is the nameless or renamed president or head of state issuing a threat to Rocket Man. Here we had sort of an interesting split. Certainly the plurality here said leave it up, but a significant number said to escalate. But still you had some who said to flag, and 6 of you said to just take it down. So it'll be interesting to hear from, well, anyone in terms of their thinking, but certainly people who said to take it down, be interested to hear from you, but anyone who wants to talk about what they felt like on this one.
So I thought this was easy from the perspective of the person on the line. It's the president of a country. It's not my job to do this. This is
above your pay grade?
Definitely above my pay grade. And I have my own thoughts about what the policy should be, but I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be enforcing it or creating it.
I think we had a comment up here.
Oops. Wait for the microphone.
Coming up behind you.
Yeah, right behind you.
Yeah, so my feeling was there's the credible threat and then context. And the problem with this one user who is unique is that you don't know that any of his threats are credible. So therefore, this one isn't credible. But if it was, a leader of a nuclear armed state who was a credible leader, like, Theresa May or something, then it might feel differently. And I don't think there should be a presidential exception, just like, okay, whatever he says rolls, because theoretically there will be something this person could say that crosses the line. But it was tricky. So it was a context and credibility issue. And yeah.
And so you decided leave it up? Yeah. Any other thoughts? Anyone grappling with this newsworthiness concept or the fact that it is a state, the leader of a state?
There's a hand in the back.
Yeah, I think Paul.
It's good to have the
microphone.
But
for the live stream.
I read the policy narrowly, as I tend to do to avoid takedowns. This was a threat directed to a country, and I'm not sure the policy applies to threats to countries. It said individuals or groups.
That's interesting.
arguably a country is made up of a group of people, but okay. But in the interest of leaving it up, I could see the narrow read there. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we're going to have to move along to the, so the next one, the really kind of shocking video, slaughter of Duma, in Duma, being posted by a Global Center for Nonviolence.
Right, and so here, it seemed like this was the one that this group may have struggled with the most in terms of most even distribution of the votes. 72 total votes, 13 people said leave it up, 22 said flag it, 22 said escalate, and 15 of you said take it down. So seems like no real consensus here, which is interesting. So let's have some discussion about why people chose what they chose on this particular one.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Oh. So I said leave it up. I think the original video maybe could be interpreted as glorifying violence, but the fact that they're sharing it in a different context to inform people about the violence does not seem to violate that policy in any way. And it's important that people are aware of these events, because otherwise it's kind of censorious of actual real affairs that people care about.
Well, it's interesting that you make that distinction, because that is part of the challenge, which is that same video in different context, maybe more people would probably vote to take it down, whereas in this context, they say leave it up. And if they are, whatever it is, reposting the content that somebody else posted, there are then questions about, do you leave up the original in order that the added context or for documenting or newsworthy reasons, whether or not you keep those up. So it's good to raise that point.
Yeah, I chose flag it because it seems like within this context of it being a slaughter, this is going to be potentially terrorist or violent content, though that would just be for the Global Center for Nonviolence post, though this is, of course, a reshare, so there would be a secondary set of review for the original thing that's being posted, so that context would be very different, but I tried to just very narrowly say, for the slaughter in Duma, we would just make it like an interstitial that says this is violent content, you click OK, then you can view the video.
And that raises the really interesting question of if the flag of the Global Center's post is the first time you're aware of the content, and then you think, oh, I need to actually go review if that video is hosted on the site, then if you go to the root source of that video and take it down, you may have effectively taken down the bulk of the content of the Global Center's post, so it gets very complicated very quickly.
And do we have any other comments on this one? There's a hand in the middle here.
It just seems to me it's problematic because, whether you're looking forward or backward is one of the things we were talking about. Like, are you looking forward towards an event, which makes incitement for violence more likely? But if you're looking backward, if you're saying that you can't say whether something constitutes a victory or a defeat, you're basically wiping out your freedom of expression. Now, we might be horrified that somebody sees that as a victory, but I'm sure that, many people liked the post of George W. Bush on the aircraft carrier saying, mission accomplished, and the tens of thousands of Iraqis that died during that war. So you start to get into censoring whether something's a victory or defeat. I don't want to be in that world.
Okay, and then to our last example, the Johnny Bling Bling police sting scenario. A little bit more of a consensus answer on this one.
Well, it's not showing up the... so the consensus answer, for some reason it's not showing the text of which one's which. Oh. but I'll explain. So actually, the consensus answer was to escalate it. 41 people voted to escalate. I don't know why it's not showing which one's which.
It's in a different order now. And
yeah, it ordered it this way. But 41 people said escalate it. 22 said to take it down. 7 said to leave it up, and then just 1 said to flag the content. So it's not displaying properly. But again, so the order was more than half people said escalate. Then take it down was the second most. Leave up with 7 votes, and flag the content was just 1. So who wants to talk about the decision process that people went through on this particular one? There's a hand all the way in the back.
Hi, oops, that was loud. I was one of the people who said take down instead of escalate, and that was partially due to my understanding of what escalate meant. I thought that escalate meant if you had some confusion about how the policy applied in that particular set of circumstances, you would escalate, versus if you wanted to suggest rethinking the entire policy. And to me, it was pretty clear. The policy says no one can impersonate someone else. That's clearly what's happening here. So take down. If escalate meant something different, if it meant maybe suggest to the higher ups that we, create some exceptions to this policy, then I might have said escalate.
Oh, we've got a hand here.
Microphones are moving around, so.
I voted take it down because I don't think social media companies are agents of the police, right? And so not only does it violate terms of service to leave it up, but to what extent can a company support a sting?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say the same thing. And then you kind of violate the trust of the rest of your users by creating an exception for a special class, which we're back to the president. But anyway.
So my take was different. This plainly violates the policy, but I thought allowing law enforcement stings might well be an implicit exception to the policy. That might have argued for just leaving it up. But on the other hand, I would want to be sure that this is really the sting and not just somebody inviting people to come and engage in illegal activity. So my reason for escalation was to give the opportunity for further investigation to see whether the unwritten exception to the plain rule was one that applied here.
And along Paul's lines, I would want to verify that the sender of the email was authentic. I wouldn't assume that because it purports to come from the government and law enforcement that it in fact did.
I think, Paul's point of the sort of implicit versus explicit exceptions, I think is something that's flowed through on a lot of these examples where, people were making judgment calls on a lot of these, often, taking into account additional context and saying there are, implicit exceptions to the rules, and then some people are reading the rules strictly, which I think demonstrates some of the challenges that all of these different policies and teams that execute these policies face.
Yeah. And that there's always going to be this tension between trying to be as quick and consistent as possible in applying a policy and something about the case that you're looking at, catching something in your brain and thinking, wait, but do we need to think about this differently? And I was glad, especially in the second section, a couple people were raising points about I kind of wanted to revise the policy. I kind of wanted, obviously we tried to gear these examples towards finding, what are the kind of the uncharted territory that some of these policies don't really cover, and where you could kind of talk yourself into needing a newsworthiness exception or needing to actually have hammered out a policy for what do we do with law enforcement stings. We as a platform should probably think about this if we're, at the size where law enforcement's coming to us and saying, we want to use your platform too for our work. So I think that basically wraps it up for the examples and the discussion. Thank you all so much for actively participating in all of this. I especially want to thank Liz Woolery, who works with me at Center for Democracy and Technology and is behind most of the examples and all of the layout and the formatting of this. We would not have a slide deck without her. And so ask her about the joys and horrors of having your job be finding sort of professional quality, controversial content to put in a slide deck. Thank you all, and I think we're going to switch immediately to the next set. Where's Tim? Something? Yeah, we're going to do a quick change, but thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I know we've heard a lot from the think tank community and also from a number of large and small companies. This panel is a